Hi, everybody. I'm sitting in my car because, well, I want to shoot this video, but I don't want to shoot it in my house, and I don't want to shoot it where I'm headed. Um, well, this is kind of like an update on a playlist that I started a few years ago, about 12 years ago. And I wanted to add, you know, some updates on like a couple of videos from like the very beginning of that playlist. It's The Strange, Silly, and Stupid from the 859. Well, 12 years ago when I started that playlist up, I told a story about a time when I was at my parents' house, and I was still a single lady, and there was this guy that got fixated on the fact that he hadn't called the wrong phone number, and that he that he'd called the correct number for a local hair salon. Well, today is, and I gotta mention this before I go any further. Today is April 29th, 2022. Okay, the story that I had told at the beginning of this playlist happened 20 some odd years ago. This was, to put some perspective on it. And I know I didn't mention this in that video. 22 years ago, people still had, the basic flip phones and Blackberries and landlines and whatever. And things weren't like they are today, 22 years later, where, like, for example, I'm shooting this video on my cell phone sitting in my car. Well, it was, if you were around back then, like I was, obviously. Sorry, I got like a thing on my phone that's making me look like I got a bump on my face. It's kind of freaking me out. Anyway, back 22 years ago, nobody had, smartphones like what I'm shooting this video on, or, more advanced technology. It was still pretty easy to, occasionally call the wrong number and whatever, which happened a lot. And as I mentioned in that video, sorry, I've got sinus drainage right now. Same problem I was having earlier, except for it's draining. Well, that aside from my sinusy issue, the dude, like I said, was fixated on it, and he thought he had called the local hair salon that's out there by mom and dad. Well, I'm not going to rehash the video. I recently, yesterday, as a matter of fact, named it to my mom. We were talking about it. About, being polite to people on the phone and whatever. And phone etiquette. Well, I mentioned to mom, this whole thing about, that dude and what all happened. Like I said, I'm not going to rehash it here. If you want to hear the story from my own lips, go watch that video again, because I pretty well explain it in that video and the subsequent video after it. Well, I told her, I said, it's one thing to be nice to somebody, like if you're working with them and, like, say, they've got some medical issue, like, they're a quadriplegic, or, like they have epilepsy and, like, they're trying to get medical help for that. And you're, on the phone with, like, whoever they're contacting to get help with that. That's one thing, but it gets to the point where if you're like that guy, and I told her about him, I said, it goes out the window. And I told her what happened. I said, and Mom, and I got to tell this story on her. And she got mad at me back then when it happened. She's like, well, you should just be nice to him and whatever. And I'm like, I told her last night, I said, Mom, I have to tell you, you know what? After he called me some choice bad words, I was like, oh, no, you don't. No, you don't get to talk to me that way. No, thank you. Oh, no, you don't. I mentioned this in the other video. I went off on the guy. He deserved it. I gotta tell you, there's something that's funny is over the years, and even, like since I shot that video and I named it to Mom and Dad, Mom was still like, oh, you should have kept being nice to him, blah, blah, blah. Dad changed, and then when I reminded them that this guy was nasty to me, Dad went, I was right the first time. You should have read the Riot Act, which I did. I mean, I read that guy the Riot Act and told him where to go and what to do when he arrived. As Winston Churchill said, tact is the ability to tell somebody to go to hell to where they look forward to the trip. I mean, that's so true at this point. But anyway, that aside, Mom and I have actually talked about some things about, like, Mom and Dad moving where they live now. Well, I told Mom, and I have to say this, because I genuinely still feel this way. Mom and Dad moved where they live now when I was a teenager. I was 19 when they moved where they live now. I just graduated high school the year before. And I tell you what, I have to say much to my parents' credit, and I have to give Mom and Dad mad props for this. Still. Them moving me out to where they live now was a good thing. I was kind of ambivalent about it. I had mixed feelings. Like, I'd lived in and I have to give you some perspective on this. I'd lived in the same place for 19 years prior to this. This is like the house literally that I grew up in. And I hadn't lived anywhere else or with anybody else, for the first 19 years of my life. I mean, I was kind of upset about this because it was just, it was change, and sometimes change is hard. But it ended up, and I have to say this, it ended up being a good thing. Because when I was 19 years old, there was some people in my life that were not good influences on me. And I have to say that. And I'm not going to apologize for saying that about them. Because they were, I ran with some people that were questionable, but they were what I call a good time Charlie when I was in high school. And then I kind of grew away from them once I got into college. Once I graduated high school and stuff, I went right to college when I was 18. I mean, like, literally, I turned 18, and the next day, my butt started college. I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. That actually happened. Well, anyway, that aside, when we moved, Mom and Dad moved me and my siblings to where they live now. I gotta say, these bad influences that I lived with didn't drive at the time. I don't know if they drive now. I've since cut contact with them. I've gone incommunicado with them, which has been a good thing. I haven't actually talked to them since, like, 1997 when they called me, which I'll get to in a minute. But anyway, I gotta say, they were like, oh, I'm gonna, and they literally said this to me, and I am not joking. This is how stupid they were. And I think I might have mentioned this in another video on the same, strange, silly, and stupid from the 859. You know what? They actually, these people were like, oh, I'm going to catch a bus out to your house and then walk. Okay, let me tell you something. Where my parents live, they live so not on a bus line, and you literally have to have a car to get to their house. Because you're liable to get bit by a dog in the process where they live. I'm not going to reveal where they live, but they live not near a bus line. Okay? And they don't live to where it's a good idea to walk to their house. Unless, like, your car broke down down the street and you're, like, half a mile away or something. And it's not even a good idea to leave your car on the street because the way people drive on that street, it's going to get hit. So you'll have to, like, hopefully limp it into their driveway and let it die in their driveway. I've actually had a car die on me, and I was able to limp it into, just as an aside, I managed to have, when I was 19 years old, my car that I had at the time, the engine went out on it, and fortunately, I was close enough to my maternal grandma's house to where I could, and she lived on a hill. I was heading down the hill, just as an aside. I managed to roll the car literally down the hill and into grandma's driveway. She comes running out after the car literally blows up. I don't mean like catches fire, blows up, like it had smoked in the car, and I was able to get it had a sunroof, like right here where my hand is, in here. I opened the thing up and I rolled down my window just enough to where I could see and let the smoke out. I managed to miss hitting the telephone pole in Grandma's driveway, because she had a telephone pole in her driveway for God only knows what reason. And I parked it. Grandma comes running out and says, "Get your butt in this house. I'm going to call your mama." I'm like, "Go ahead." Call her. Yeah, we have to call her anyway to tell her where I am and that the car blew up. But anyway, that aside, the bad influence. So, "Oh yeah, I'm going to catch the bus and walk to your house." I laughed at her over the phone. I said, "Seriously?" I'm like, "Yeah, right. You're going to walk to my house." I'm like, "Your butt is going to get bit by a dog. Once you get to where, like the end of the street where we live, you're going to get your butt bit by a dog. And I don't want to hear about it." I go, "And I'm not driving into town just to get you. I am literally not driving into town to get you. I'm not riding the neighbor's cow into town to get your ass." I'm like, you're on your own. I'm going to take off my glasses because it's getting kind of dark out. But anyway, after I took this girl to where I lived with my parents at the time, where they live now, obviously, she went, "Oh, I am not catching the bus to your house." And I'm like, "Yeah, think." I'm like, "Seriously." It's like, this is what I told you over the phone. I think I would know what I'm talking about. Because she called me at their house. Anyway, I finally quit having anything to do with her, just because, my life went one way and hers went another, and I just was like, adios. And she made it clear to me, and I've told this story on here before, that she picked a guy at the time over her relationship with me, and I tried to be a good influence to her, and she just basically was like, "Up yours." I'm not, she was basically being a horn dog. That's the long and the short of it. She was basically being a horn dog about everything, and she was as one of my siblings, but he called her horny head or something like that. He was right. Well, anyway, oddly enough, right around Christmas of 1997, it was like Thanksgiving, Christmas, it was late in the year 1997, I was out at my parents' house, and well, I knew I was getting close to graduating college at that point, or university. Well, I was sitting there, I had the college gave you a book of your requirements and what you need for your major and whatever, when I was starting up there back in the 90s. Well, I was sitting there with the book going through, okay, I need this class, and I need this class, and I was going through the book going, okay, here's what I need. I was working out, okay, this is what I've taken. And I was trying to figure out, okay, I've taken this, I've got this, I need to do this. It was one of those days where you're figuring out, okay, it's what you need to do, and you're trying to figure out, okay, no. And you're looking at the schedule for the next semester saying, okay, well, I need to work this out, where it's okay, I've got this, and you have to work it out on paper, because it's it's easier to have it all printed out in front of you. Well, she calls me on the phone, wanting me to come to some baby shower for her. Now, at this point, in 1997, I had, at that point, gone overseas to England for school, for university classes, and come back. I was literally sitting in my room at my parents' house out there in the county. She'd been to the house and everything at this point, so she knew I was out in the boonies. She wanted me to come out, and I said to her, I said, "Listen, I'm going to stop you right there. I said, I appreciate you thinking of me and everything, but I'm not the person you were friends with in high school anymore. I said, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not saying that to be cruel or mean or anything. I was like, but my life and your life are not compatible anymore. I said, I would greatly appreciate it if you forget my phone number. I said, because I don't see you and me being friends ever again. Because like I said, she just basically was like up yours to me years ago. 2-3 years prior to that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have the time. This was before I went overseas and everything with school, with the university. I was like, you know what? I don't have time to sit here and be friends with you if you're going to act the way you acted. And I tried to be a good influence on her. And, well, it is what it is. Well, I gotta say this. I don't feel guilty about it. You know what's ironic is I found out, and this goes back to the conversation I had with my mom last night. Well, we got to talking about that girl, and I told Mom, I said, I have to tell you, Mom, and I still mean this, and I don't care who knows it, I'm glad I quit being friends with that girl. I don't want anything to do with her. I've seen her in the last 5 years, and I've got to say, I knew who she was. I've changed so much that I know that she didn't recognize me, and I wouldn't have, if I was to see her again tomorrow, I wouldn't talk to her. I mean, I would just probably look at her, smile, wave, just go on, and not say a word to her. Other than that, but I don't want to be friends with her ever again, just because, like I said, I don't want her level of friendship ever again. Although I still talk about her and the stunt that she pulled with that guy to this day. And I'm pretty sure I told the story in one of the videos earlier on this channel about the stunt she pulled and about how I had to go home that night. And this was I was 18 at the time that she did that with that guy. And the guy was 27 and she was 17. He was a whole decade on her. She was jailbait. But, she went home and my mother, I came home from work and Mom asked me, where is, friend? And I couldn't lie to her. Lie to my mom. I looked her right in the face and said, well, Mom, she went home with so-and-so. And, I told her not to, and she did anyway, and I just was like, I'm not going to lie to her. I'm not. It's not worth it to me. Mom can clearly see that, what, this girl's not here. I'm not going to lie to her. I'm like, well, she did this, and everything. And I mean, after that, and it's just everything that went on with that girl. I'm just like, really, I do not regret, and I told Mom this last night, I do not regret quit being friends with her. I'm still very grateful to this day that I've stopped being friends with her. But like I said, if I was to see her today, I probably wouldn't speak to her. But I do not want to be friends with her ever again. And you know what? And I have to say this. I've talked to Tony about this. He's explicitly told me, because I've told him about this. He's said to me, we were talking about it one night and about things that we've done and everything. Tony has told me that he does not want that girl in our house or me to become friends with her ever again, because he's especially, and he knows her. He knows of her, not only from what I've said, but from other people, because my husband went to high school with me. So he kind of, unfortunately for her, my husband does know of her reputation. Because he was at the school the same time she was. Or that she and I both were there. So he's like, yeah, she's not welcome at our house. I don't want her here. I don't want her near us. She's to stay away. I said, Tony, that's not going to be a problem, because I don't want to deal with her either. But anyway, I don't know. It's just, I wanted to get on here and say, all the craziness over the last 30 years of my life, it's been making me think, you know what, I'm glad that with everything said and done, things are getting better for me. And I just wanted to, say, granted, there's been some crazy stuff happening. And something I want to mention about what I started talking about at the beginning of this video about that dude that called a bunch of times. Last night, I told Mom about what happened, and I said, Mom, what gets me is the fact that you're like, oh, you should have stayed nice to him. I'm like, Mom, you realize by the time that I got around to talking to him again, he was calling me bad names, and I told her what he said. And she went, what? And I said, exactly. That's why he read the riot act. At the end, and Mom's like, well, I don't blame you on that one. And I said, that's not what you said when I told you that night. You were like, oh, you should have kept being nice to him. I wanted to smack her, and I told her, I said, I wanted to slap the stupid out of you, Mom. I said, but, it is what it is. At this point, Mom, when I told her what all happened, and I explained it to her, she was like, no. I said, exactly. Well, anyway, it's just one of those things that I wanted to get on here and say, but you know what? And this is something I wanted to mention before I forget again. Part of the reason why what I think happened back then, 20-some years ago happened, is because, unlike today where we have smartphones, like what I'm shooting this video on, people didn't have that where they could check, to make sure they were calling the right number and everything. So things were different, and, I'm not entirely surprised it happened. Because it happened a lot. And back, in 2019, when I was at Mom and Dad's house during the day, because I was getting over a major surgery, which I won't talk about here, the phone never rang and people going, hey, can I, what's the wait like at the hair salon? That never happened. That was 3 years ago. Well, anyway, I'm going to pause here because I've got things I need to go take care of, and I've talked long enough. I want to thank you all for watching. I'll shoot some more videos, especially on that playlist, The Strange, Crazy, and Silly from the 859 in a little bit. Bye.